Now with the signup API route added, let's go back to the auth form and make sure that we talk to this API route when the user authenticates. For this, in the end, we want to listen to the form submission, and then if we are not in login mode, which means we are in create mode, then we want to send a request to our backend here to create a new user. For this, I'll add a new function, the submit handler, let's say, where we get that event, which we use to, again, prevent the default, as we did it many times before in this course. And then here, I'll first of all check if we are in login mode, which means we want to log user in. We want to log a user in. That's something we can't do yet, so I'll do nothing here. But if we are in the not login mode, so in the create mode, then we want to send a request that creates a new user. For this, I'll create a new function outside of the component function. We could also create it in a brand new file. I'll just do it here to keep the component function lean. And I'll name this function create user, like this. And here I expect to get the email and the password. We will need to retrieve that from the forum in a second. And then here I want to send a request. So again, we can use the fetch function as we did multiple times before in the course, and send the request to /API/auth/signup to target this signup API route. Now it should be a post request, so I'll add this second argument here and set the method to post, and then add the body. And the body will be in JSON format, and I'll add an object with email and password, so with that data we get as parameters. Then let's also add some headers to pass extra information about the fact that we're sending JSON data by adding that content type header like this, and we configured this request. Now I will turn create user into an async function, so that again we can use a wait here, and of course then we can wait for our response and then handle that response. Now, for example, by getting the data out of that response with response JSON and awaiting that, since that also returns a promise. And then maybe check if not response okay. So if it's not okay, if we got an error status code, and then we could throw a new error where we use data message as a message, or if we don't have that, just say something went wrong. And then ultimately, I'll return data here though, if we make it past this if check. So that's create user. Now here in that else case in the submit handler, we want to call create user and pass in the email and password. Now for this, we need to get access to the entered email and password, and we can use state with two-way binding for that. We did that in the blog project, for example, or we use refs for quick and easy access. And I'll do the latter. I'll import use ref from React like this. And then in the component function, just create two refs for the two inputs we have. And we have the email input ref then. And we also have the password input ref like this then. Now we just need to wire them up. So on the email input, we set ref equal to email input ref. And on the password input, we set that equal to password input ref. Now that we got those refs, we can get the data in the submit handler. So here we got the entered email by accessing the email input ref.current.value, as you saw before in the course, and get the entered password by accessing password input ref.current.value. Now we could add validation here. That's optional. We definitely need validation in the API route though, because that validation here on the client can always be tricked. And we do have validation on the API route, so I will save some time here and save some code and not add validation in this component. So we'll skip this here, and instead we'll use that data just like this, and then create a user here. So for this, we pass the entered email as a first argument to create user and the entered password as a second argument. Now, of course, create user is an async function and hence returns a promise. So we can also turn submit handler into an async function so that we can use await in here as well and await that response, that result of that operation. Maybe also wrap it with try catch to catch any errors we might be facing here. And then we can handle these errors. And for the moment, I'll just console log any errors we might be getting, like this. And if we are successful, though, if we stay in that try block, then we, of course, know that now a user was created. So then here I'll just console log the regular result for the moment. And we can give the user a better feedback, but we did dive into those things before in the course already. And therefore here I really want to focus on the authentication exclusive part. Hence here for the moment, we will just log the result to the console and not do anything else. Now that should be sending a request. Of course, we now still need to connect the form though. So we connect on submit to the submit handler like this. And there also is something we still need to do on the API route. Because I'm sending a post request here, and indeed only post requests should trigger this user creation. So here in this async function handler, I actually want to check if request method is equal to post and only continue in that case. So if request method is post, then I will execute that code. Otherwise, I don't do anything. Of course, therefore, alternatively, if I revert this, we could also check if the request method is not post and then just return and only continue if it is post. Then we don't need to wrap everything with that if check. We could have done that before in the course as well, in similar cases. Okay, so now if we save everything, this should work. If we go back to the auth form, reload and click on create new account, and I open the developer tools to check for output and errors. If I enter some data here, let's say a password which is too short, then I get back a 422 response with my error message that the password is too short. And of course, we might want to show that to the user, but for the reasons mentioned a couple of seconds ago, I'm not doing this here. So if I now enter a password which is long enough and I send this request, that looks better, and I get created user as a response. And if we have a look into our MongoDB collections here, we have the auth demo database, and in users, we see our user data. And we see that password actually is an object, though. That's not entirely correct. I'll have to look into that again. That should not be an object. It should be a super long, strange-looking string. But generally, it's working. If you are getting some error with your connection to MongoDB or something like this, double check that you also whitelisted your local IP under network access, by the way. But with that, let's have a look at our password generation and what's going wrong there. In the API route, I'm creating that hashed password, and yes, that of course returns a promise. I forgot to await that, and hence I stored the promise in the database instead of the result of that promise, which would be that string, and hence we need to await hash password here. If we do that, and I then send that same request again for the same user, now if we update MongoDB, we see that here that's our hashed password. So that's looking good. Let me delete the other user. And that's how we can create users totally on our own with the tools we learned about before in the course already.